It's one thing to be able to build an initial 3x3. It's one thing to be able to make content. It's one thing to set up a campaign in Infusionsoft or inside whatever tool. It's another thing to figure out why is something working or why is it not working. How do you tell? If an ad's not working, do you know why? Is it the content? Maybe the content sucks. Maybe it's not a good 1-minute video. Is it the targeting? Maybe it's great content, but it's against the wrong people. Maybe it's the right people, but your content, I mean, how do you know what, maybe you didn't bid it properly, maybe it's the time of day, maybe it's the wrong stage in the funnel. How do you know what it is? If you don't have this set up, you won't be able to tell. But the good news is, if you believe that it's not about technology, which is tactics and channels and tools and automation, if you believe it's about strategy, it's fundamentally a people issue. It's a psychology issue. We're actually all in the business of trust. Anytime you're selling something, I know Justin's nodding his head because he knows. Anybody in the business of sales, the reason why they can work in different industries seamlessly and cross over is because they're in the business of generating trust. That's what right? There's left brain and right brain, and people make decisions based on their heart, based on that trust. And they validate based on what sounds good because that sports car has better mileage or what have you, right? Or because that pair of shoes was on sale. So Elena said she justified in her head that, you know, it was Nordstrom's semi-annual sale. Of course, I'm saving all this money. So there's the real reason, and then there's the what looks good reason. There's always two reasons when people decide. And the number one way people decide is what their peers are doing because it's safer, because of rational ignorance like we talked about earlier today. If we can create a situation where the crowd does the work for us, where we can have multiple touches of increasing social proof, we can reuse content that's already part of our greatest hits, not just because it's a great piece of content generically, because we think from a creative standpoint it's good content, but because it has yielded social proof in terms of lots of people that have engaged with it, in terms of the algorithm said from a relevance score or quality score standpoint that this is good content, then we know that we can adjust and expand the targeting. We can take content that sits low funnel and have it move up funnel a little bit by changing the targeting, by widening that, by creating similar content. So the idea of constantly adjusting and optimizing is about, I've got some sequence I put out there, I think it's good, I've built something, I take all this effort to build my website, but then I don't really test it. I'm just going off of heuristics. I'm just whatever I think, you know, completely. Do I like red? Do I like blue? Do I like this landing page? Who knows, right? But when you start to run traffic through and you test and you build up momentum, then you have a greater and greater audience pool. You have more engagement, and therefore you have more conversion, right? And the more data you have here, the more your remarketing audiences get bigger. Because when you build your initial funnel, it's kind of sad. People will build a funnel that goes from awareness to engagement to conversion, but guess what? Your conversion is dependent on how big the engagement pools are. Your engagement pools are dependent upon how strong your awareness is. So if some people, they start this thing out and they say, yeah, my conversion campaigns aren't yielding anything. Well, that's because you have nothing feeding it from the engagement stage. The reason why you have a 3x3 is the more power you build in the top layer, the more you can generate here, the more flows down here. The sizes of these audiences increase as you move down. When you extend what's working on Google over to Bing, when you take what's working on Facebook and video over to YouTube, you are extending the sizes of these audiences as you increase the size of your marketing pools all the way down. That means whatever yield you were getting, let's say if you double the size, all else equal, you double the size of remarketing pool at the same yield, you get twice the output, right? So we know that remarketing is the heart of the social amplification engine. It is the heart of digital, because remarketing is content that we have proven to convert against audiences that have proven to convert. So whether you create a lookalike against that, or you're just trying to make slight tweaks to the content or slight tweaks to the targeting, you're just trying to fine-tune the combination of these to try to get more out of what you already have. How do you do that? Like everyone wants to get more, right? You do that by looking at where you have wins here that you can, what is going on? I'm stuck on this thing here. You have more wins here that you're trying to amplify, and you have bleeders that you're trying to kill. That's what this stage is. We'll talk more about this tomorrow. But tomorrow I want you to think from a from a technical standpoint, from a mechanical standpoint, there's things that you need to do with pixels and turning ads on and off and budgeting and whatever. But I think the most important thing to understand from this view is that if you have the strategy right, if you understand the journey psychologically, how you're bringing people through to be able to go from the why to the how, because people buy who you are, not what you offer, right? They buy your why. That actually is how people make decisions. And then you're able to adjust. If you bring all three of these together, you become a multi-channel marketer. You become bulletproof for any changes that occur. You're never having to worry about changes that come down the pipe, right? And this is worth the investment. A lot of people will just try to create a conversion ad because that's what works and it's all about making money. They don't want to wait, I don't need to drive conversions. Of course, I understand you got to drive conversions. But as we've seen, when you invest in these two parts in the funnel, the cost that you put in awareness and engagement more than makes up for any loss that you have here, right? The net cost here is still yields you a better cost per conversion than if you were to put everything strictly in conversion, because you get nailed so hard in relevance score that it creates a downward spiral on the campaigns that you make on Google and on Facebook. For the same reason, when you have a funnel that's working and it's driving word of mouth and these assets are building up social proof, that is something that no one else can copy. Because if someone else were to straight up rip off your best post, straight up duplicate your website, shamelessly steal everything that you have, they can't steal the social proof that you have. They can't steal your relevance score and the history of conversion that you have fed in the Google and Facebook, because the system now has learned who your audience is, so it'll help you stay on top with very little maintenance on your own. Right? So these principles can work to help you or to hurt you. And with these algorithms, on Google's algorithm and Facebook's algorithm, right, whether it's the first page of Google or whether it's the newsfeed, those are both almost the same algorithm. The fact that these are becoming more competitive is actually to our advantage. You guys have heard my genie story? Yeah? Heard me talk about the genie? No? I'll tell you the one joke I'll tell, right? So the guy walks on the beach, he finds a genie lamp, picks it up, rubs it, out pops the genie. He's cynical and he says, all right, so what's the deal here, genie? He's like, well, you get your 3 wishes, obviously, but I'm a special genie. I'm the 2018 genie, and whatever I grant you, Patch, your ex-wife or whoever will get double whatever that is, right? So the guy says, all right, I want $10 million. So boom, he gets $10 million, and then all of a sudden $20 million immediately wired into the ex-wife's bank account, right? And then second wish, he says, 10 Lamborghinis, right? Bam, Joe Ma has 10 Lamborghinis, but then his ex-wife has 20 Lamborghinis all lined up, right away. He's like, man, I can't believe she got twice that, right? It's like, and so then he said, all right, genie, so for my third and final wish, what I want you to do is strike me half dead. And so what happens with the algorithms is we have an increasingly competitive situation. You hear a lot of people whining about how, Infusionsoft is really hard to use. Google's shutting me out because of organic. There's all these search results and it's hard. Google's trying to force me to run ads now, and it's all a pay-to-play system, and it's also confusing. And now it's Snapchat and Instagram and WhatsApp and whatever, right? That's to our advantage, because when we build winners in our greatest hits here, winners that we continue to let live forever, we have an increasing advantage. This is the reverse Robin Hood, because the rich get richer. The reason why the poor, everyone who lives below the line, is getting hammered is all that traffic is going to the winners at the very top. The reason why fake news and things that go viral are going to become ever more viral into the future is because the more competition there is, the more it over-rewards the winners. You guys understand, as an output of the power law in math, when there is more volume, the the head, the top 10, whatever, gets the disproportionate share of the traffic. And the long tail is so low that it gets decreasingly less, right? We want to be at the top. We want to build the momentum, this positive momentum versus the negative momentum, right? That's the way to think about things. It's worth investing in building this because then we've got a ship that works evergreen. And tomorrow, we're going to talk about how do you take these assets that we're talking about theoretically and turn it into something that will self-adjust, where the algorithm will do the work for us, where we don't have to worry about how do we structure our ad sets or changing our bids on a cost per click basis or like lots of little maintenance sorts of things. We can worry more about, if we have that stuff taken care of, we can worry more about our strategy and spend most of our time here. We should be spending 80% of our time trying to tune our greatest hits, only 20% of our time making new content. 80% of our time, 80% of our work should be done by people that we delegate to, and 20% of it should be done by us initially because we are building it out ourselves, the idea of learn, do, teach. So for those that aren't delegating, for those who aren't figuring out how to optimize in a repeatable process, then you're just banging your head against the wall because you're not sticking everything into a framework that's completely reusable. I'm a lazy person. I don't want to do something 8 times over and over and over every single day. I just don't want to do that. I want to figure out how to delegate it. I want to automate it. I want to not have to do it. I want to find things that will stay, not just there's a sale next week or I have to create 3 blog posts every day. Like earlier, you heard about evergreen content versus sporadic content or news-driven content or any kind of expiring sort of content. Because people will always need homes. They'll always need to eat. They'll always need to improve their self-worth. They'll always need to lose weight. They'll always need, those things will always need to be true. They'll always be watching TV, right? They'll always be trying to avoid commercials. They'll always be needing help for someone to help, they'll always be trying to sell tickets, right? So if you can build one of these, then you have a template to reuse. And if you're an agency, you can build one of these for your lighthouse, which is that preeminent example in that vertical, and you can replicate this like in a software-like way to everyone else in the sports vertical, everyone else that's a gym, everyone else that lives in Hawaii and is a billionaire, right? All of these kinds of things. So that's what I want to leave you with. Think about Inception as the dream inside the dream inside the dream. How can you step beyond the details to understand the big picture of all the things that we're doing here today? How can we tie the strategy and the tactics together? Thank you very much.